begin with the Save American Act within a speech.
Logging pod starts like a conversation. Cup of coffee with no destination. Just voices trying to understand what's happening across this land. From your stories told to the pages turned. Every question, every word, supported by SheSharesStudios.net.
Hello and welcome to the Vlogging Pod. So let's talk Save American Act and the recent election claims that were released on the 2020 election documents. You remember this, Laura, when the head of this administration came out and talked, president came out and had this last speech.
Yes, I think I got the summary from everybody. I didn't watch it though.
No, even a couple of the stations, I don't remember which one, the major ones, didn't air it. They chose to keep their you didn't know that?
No, I didn't know that. They chose to keep their regular scheduled programming.
Mhm. Yeah, it was one of the big ones, either like ABC or NBC, one of the others. I can't remember, or CBS, one of those 3. I think it was 2 out of those 3. I can't remember exactly which ones. So, what exactly happened is the election. Now, first, before I tell you what happened, let's break it down so people understand just a little bit before I start talking about what was said. For election law is basically the body of federal and state law governing how elections are administered. And that typically covers who's eligible to vote, how voters register, identification requirements. I think we talk about a little bit like that because here in Ohio, we have to share our driver's license and tell where we live. Uh, Mail and absentee voting, how many ballots are counted, voter roll maintenance, campaign financing, and election challenges, recounts, and certifications. Now, the states and local governments administrate most elections, including federal elections. Congress also has constitutional authority to regulate the times, places, and manner of the congressional elections. Federal laws, including the National Voter Registration Act, Help America's Vote Act, Voting Rights Act, and federal criminal statutes place national requirements on state election systems. Now when you say that, okay, so if you've been living under a rock and you haven't heard what the Save American Act is, because I wish I could live under a rock sometimes so that I didn't know what it was, because I just hear it over and over from the head of this administration. The Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act, commonly called the SAVE Act or Save America Act, would impose new federal requirements for voter registration and voting in federal elections. Now, this is the interesting part. The House passed the 2026 version and would require documented proof of United States citizenship when a person registers to vote in a federal election, updates or changes an existing federal voter registration. Now, the legislate would also impose a nationwide photo identification requirement for voting in federal elections. Citizenship is already required to vote in federal elections. The proposed change concerns how citizenship would have to be documented and verified. The legislation would affect voters changing an address or a name, not only people registering for the first time. The bill also established procedures for states to identify and remove people believed to be eligible from federal voter rolls. Now, what documents would satisfy this type of citizenship requirement? Interesting, you might ask, I say to myself. A valid United States passport would be one form of documented proof. I did look into that. I think it's like $100 and some to almost $200. A passport would not be the only option. Other possible documentations under the legislation includes a qualifying birth certificate combined with an accepted photo identification, a certificate of naturalization, a certificate of citizenship, and certain identification documents that explicitly establish United States citizenship. Now, a standard driver's license or real ID would not necessarily establish citizenship because lawful permanent residents and other non citizens may legally possess those documents. A person whose current name differs from the name of their birth certificate could need additional documentation establishing name change depending on the procedures adopted by election. Like if you got married and changed your name.
Mhm.
The burden yeah, so if you brought your name, your license in, you brought your all your stuff in, and then you don't match your birth certificate, that doesn't work. So the burden, therefore, would not necessarily be the cost of a passport. It could include cost and time required to obtain replacement of your birth, marriage, divorce, adoption, naturalization, or identity documents. Now, does requiring paid documents violate the Constitution prohibition against poll taxes?
Mm.
Because we're not supposed to have to pay to vote. That's
Yeah,
considered a poll tax. Yeah, did you not know that?
I did not know that, but it makes sense. It just
Uh-huh.
any little thing, right?
So it's called a poll tax, and basically the 24th Amendment, okay, prohibits denying or restricting the right to vote in the federal elections because a person failed to pay a poll tax or another tax. So, if we have to pay for identification and we have to go get a special this or we have to pay for getting our marriage certificate, divorce, birth, because those things they don't just issue. You got to pay for having it shipped, or what do they call that? A filing fee,
Mhm.
or stuff like that, along with all that. So that's what you could think of as a poll tax. That now you have to pay a poll tax to be able to vote. So the
Yeah.
Save American Act does not directly impose a fee paid to an election official as condition of voting. It's a constitutional vulnerability would instead involve whether the cost of obtaining required documents, which I just basically said, creates an unlawful burden on qualified voters. Now, the courts have generally distinguished a prohibited poll tax from incidental expenses connected to obtaining identification, although those examples can still be challenged under the First and 14th Amendments. A court reviewing the law would likely examine the availability of free documentation, the number of citizens lacking ready access to qualify for documents, travel and administrative burdens, whether alternative verification procedures are bearable, the government's evidence supporting the restrictions. The constitutional or the exact 2026 federal bill has not been finally decided because it has not become law and has not been viewed through completed litigation. Now, so when we go into constitutional over election with the election clause, yeah, then you're gonna go into Article 1, Section 4, you're gonna break it down with a lot more litigation here. State legislates an initial authority over the times, places, and manner of congressional elections. The same clauses give Congress power to alter those rules. Congress, therefore, has substantial constitutional authority to set nationwide registration and identification rules for federal congressional elections. The federal and authority is not unlimited and remains subject to other constitutional protections. Now, there's a lot breaking down here. I could go on a little bit farther. We're talking about the 10th Amendment and the First and 14th Amendment. But I want to go and move it a little bit ahead because now, if you listen to the president's speech, and this, just in case you don't know, was sorry, gotta rearrange the papers around here, Laura. Got a lot of notes here, a lot of notes. That's why I'm like, do I wanna
I
go?
do.
I'm like, do I wanna read some more constitutional amendments? Not really, unless you have questions, and then I can break that down, but that's a lot of big words there. Let's see. And I don't like them big words.
No, she
Um,
doesn't.
I say keep it small, keep it small. So July 16th, 2026 was the election speech from the head of administration. So, I want to go through some principal claims made by the head of this administration. Are you ready to run down a rabbit hole with me?
Yeah, let's do this.
Let's do it. Yeah, let's right on
Do
in
it.
that. So, during the July 16th primetime address, the head of this administration presented recently released or declassified material as evidence of major weakness and foreign interference and alleged concealment connected to the 2020 election. Now, did you hear that? That he released a whole bunch of papers on it, say that they supported why we needed the SAVE Act. Because this was his claim, as he said that China had obtained information. Well, let me suck down some water here connected to approximately 220 million American voters. He also said the incident represented a major compromise of United States election information. Intelligence official concealed or minimalized the information about Chinese activity. Now, and released records supported broader claims that the 2020 election was not secure. Now, again, I want to reiterate here that 2020, the head of the administration was the same as the head of the administration that we currently have. I just want to point that out for anyone who's confused. A Michigan voter registration investigation demonstrated significant election wrongdoings. He also said hundreds of thousands of non citizens were registered to vote in 4 states, and that the Save American Act was needed to prevent foreign interference and non citizen wrongdoing. Now, here's where we get into the evidence. Are you ready?
Mhm.
So we've heard the claims, and now here's where we go as far as the evidence review. The claim China obtained information involving approximately 220 million voters. Now, what the released information indicates, the documents describing intelligence concerning a possible Chinese effort to obtain or use voter related data. Now, the figures cited in the speech refer to a very large collection of voter information. Voter registration information is not uniformly secret. Names, addresses, party registration, and voting history are available through lawful political and commercial databases in many states, although access rules vary. The existence of acquisitions of voter data does not establish that voting machines were accessed. It does not the acquisition doesn't establish that ballots were changed. It doesn't establish vote totals were altered. It doesn't establish voter registration records were successively manipulated. It does not establish the outcome of elections changed. Now, here's what the intelligence actually did conclude. The intelligence community post election assessment concluded that, you ready?
Mhm.
I got you on the edge of your seat.
Yes.
Concluded that no foreign actor altered technical aspects of the voting process. This is from the paperwork he released, okay?
Oh, look at that. Wow.
No aspects of the voting process, including voter registration, ballot casting, vote tabulation, and the reporting of results. The assessment concluded that China considered influence activity but did not deploy an interference operation intended to change the outcome of the 2020 presidential election. Intelligence officials assessed that Beijing preferred a stable relationship and viewed the risk of direct election interference as greater than the potential benefits. The same assessment, now this is interesting. This is the pivotal point of my whole research. Are you ready?
Mhm.
The same assessment found that Russia conducted influence operations and aimed at damaging Joe Biden's candidacy, supporting the head of this administration and the worsening political division. The intelligence assessment, therefore, did not conclude that China stole or changed the 20 election for Biden.
Wow.
I know, imagine that.
Imagine that. See,
I know, right? Absolutely insane.
I like
So
I
now
like how our tone depicts how not surprised we are.
I know. Well,
Wow, this is brand new information. Wow.
excuse me. The claim the documents prove China interfered in the election Biden. Okay, here we go again. The release material does not establish that China altered votes or changed the election outcome. Some intelligent reporting described possible or suspected Chinese inactivity involving voter information. Intelligence agencies distinguish between collecting voter related information, conducting general influence activity, inferring with voter infrastructure, and altering ballots or totals. Those are not legally or factually interchangeable. The official 2021 intelligence assessment concluded that Beijing did not undertake the kind of influence operation the speech attributed to Beijing. The
Mm,
documents contained intelligent reports, leads, and allegations, but intelligent reporting can conclude unverified claims that require evaluation before becoming an intelligent community conclusion. Now, here's another claim. The intelligence agency suppressed evidence of Chinese elections interference. Again, the administration argued that the information concerning possible Chinese activity was properly pursued or publicly emphasized. The intelligence community did publicly release a 2021 assessment addressing Chinese, Russian, and Iranian activity. The assessment concluded that China did not deploy an operation to interfere in the presidential election. The disagreement with the intelligent reporting does not necessarily establish the invasion was suppressed. While intelligent analytical judgments and coordinated assessments can differ, a claim of concealment would require evidence that officials knowingly hid verified information rather than rejecting qualified or assessing low confidence to unverified report. The release documents have not established that officials possess verified proof or China changed votes of cause Biden's victory and claim to conceal that proof. And another claim. The release documents prove the 2020 election was stolen. There's the big one, right? Um,
mhm,
The release material does not show that ballots or certified vote totals were changed by China or any other foreign government. Okay, another claim. Now, there's a lot of other bullet points, but we only have 20 minutes, Laura, and we're already 17 minutes in. I'm not going to go through all those
mhm,
bullet points. Another claim foreign interface was primarily intended to assist Biden for the coordinary 2020 intelligence assessments did not make that finding. Another claim was Michigan voter registration investigation proves widespread election. The release files refer to suspicious voter registration applications connected to an organization operating in Muskegon, Michigan. Local and state authorities investigated the applicants. Questionable registration forms are not the same as unlawful votes. Election systems are designed to review registration applications before adding applicants to the roll. According to the reviewed reporting, the investigation did not produce evidence that the questioned applicants resulted in fraudulent ballots affecting the presidential result. The FBI review did not establish a criminal operation that changed the Michigan outcome. Now, another claim approximately 2,708 non citizens were registered in the four states. The DHS correspondence concerned California, New Jersey, Nevada, and Pennsylvania. The reported totals were derived through comparison involving federal immigration or citizen database. The database does not match necessarily prove that a person is currently a non citizen and registered to vote. The possible sources of erroneous matches include, okay, you ready? This is when you
mhm,
got to think about it. It's outdated immigration information, naturalized citizens whose older records identify them as non citizens, similar names, incomplete birth dates, data entry mistakes, records belonging to different people. These are the things that they found why it happened.
mhm,
Registration does not prove that the person cast a ballot. The states disputed the reliability or the meaning of the administration figures. The released information did not establish 278,000 non-citizens voters in 2020 election or any later election. Non-citizens voting in federal elections is already illegal. Now, for most people, just to understand that, I could get into a little more defining what flagged, registered vote, or illegal vote, or established, but I'm pretty certain that those are pretty typical terminology. Would you need me to verify that or to explain those?
No, I think that they've well, if not, then someone in the comments will let us know.
Right? I have it written, but again, we're already on our 20-minute mark, but I wanna get just a few finer points here before I close out tonight's podcast. So, just so that we're aware, the status of the Save American. Now, it did pass in the House, and that passed in February 2026. The measure did not obtain the Senate support that it needed to overcome a filibuster under ordinary Senate procedures. So it's not a law. It's not anything. Whether it passed the House or not, and even if it goes through the Senate, a lot of the time they make modifications. So then it would be shot back to the House. So it's not a sure thing, even then. But it has
Okay.
not passed the Senate. Republicans hold a Senate majority, but do not hold the 60 votes normally required to invoke on a legislation opposed by most Democrats. The head of the administration has called for the Senate to eliminate or bypass the filibuster to pass the legislation. The Senate leadership has not eliminated the filibuster. The House Republicans have also attempted to advance election related provisions, though the budget reconciliation process. The reconciliation legislation can pass the Senate with a simple majority. Senate rules generally require reconciliation provisions to have direct budgetary effect. Non budgetary election regulations could be removed under the Byrd rule. I don't know if most people know when you have something that passes, each House and each Senate has someone like an oversight that would say, hey, you can't do that, you can't do this. I lost my camera. Back on it. I have to reload that. So each House and Senate. So when they talk about the funding, you can't have it has to stick to one lane. You know what I'm saying? You
Right.
can't throw like something in this large into it. So that's what they're kind of talking by the Byrd rule, that it would be removed under the Byrd law. So the House's July 22nd budget resolution included instructions allowing work on funding connected to election requirements, but it did not itself enact the Save American Act. As of July 23rd, that's today, 26th, the Save American Act has not become federal law. Now, here's the interesting thing that I find very interesting. Hold on now. I'm going to push that record on that. I'll be piecing that together. The Senate is already in recess, did you know?
Oh, okay.
Well,
Is anyone
they're
here?
scheduled. I spoke a little too fast. They're scheduled to vote to
Oh,
be in recess. So the Senate is currently scheduled to begin its summer state work period on August 10th, 2026. So the scheduled state work period runs through. Okay, yeah. So they would be because they're not going to be on it. They're recessed, and now they won't. It'll run through September 11th. So yeah, I'm right. They recessed because I think they recessed early on that. The Senate is currently scheduled to begin its summer state work period on August 10th. The scheduled state work period runs through September 11th. The Senate is scheduled to return after that period in mid September. The recess does not extend past November 2026. The Senate's tenant target adjournment for the year is December 18, 26. So the schedule is tentative and can be changed, but the Senate may also be recalled during a recess. The August recess, therefore, does not automatically make the Save America impossible to consider before November. And I say that because, hello, elections are in November.
mhm,
But what I would find interesting, even if you were to pass it, it takes a certain while for things to be implemented.
right.
And I would think there would be so many court cases for people not being able to get their paperwork in order or a passport, but that's me just thinking off the script here, off script. So so why the bill remains stalled despite the recess ending before November. Now, the principal obstacle is not the Senate will remain closed until after the election. The larger obstacle is that the bill lacks the 60 votes needed under the current filibuster rules. A reconciliation version would face limits on whether election requirements qualify as budgetary provisions. Even I remember what I told you about the little bird thing we called there. What did we
Yep.
call that? The bird roll. That's where that would play in. So, the current reconciliation version would face limits whether election qualifier budget provision. Even if the states pass an alternate version, the House and Senate would have to pass identical. Remember I told you even if it the Senate would to adjust it or put it that they'd still be shoot it back to the House. They have to be identical. They have to both houses, both Senate and the House have to agree on it. So the
Yeah.
legislation would then be sent to the president. Now, again, what I just already said when I was talking off script, court challenges would be expected if a nationwide documentary citizenship or voter identification state law became possible. So, the current factual position is that the Save America Act would create nationwide documented citizenship requirements. The passport would be accepted, but would not only qualify as citizens' documents. The legislation could still impose costs on citizens who must obtain replacement or supporting doc. The cost of the non-automatically make the bill a poll tax, which I already talked to you about. It's not supposed to have poll tax for our elections. Then we talked about the released 2020 election documents that didn't establish China. The intelligence community concluded that China didn't deploy. The intelligence community concluded that Russia conducted the influence activity into intent and damage Biden and benefit the head of this administration. The Michigan material concerned suspicion registration applications, not proof of enough fraudulent votes. The administration figures concerning non-citizens identified possible data matches not confirmed on lawful votes. The Senate summer recess is scheduled for August 10th through September 11th and does not run past the November election. The Save American Act remains stalled primarily because it lacks sufficient Senate support under the current rules and may not qualify for reconciliation. Now, today's sources come from Trump says these documents prove his false claims of election fraud from the Associated Press. Trump accuses China of 2020 election interference, contradicting U.S. intelligence, Reuters. Fact checking Trump's election security speech, factcheck.org. Election integrity, the White House. 6 things to know about the Save American Act, Bipartisan Policy Center. Oh, here we go. A couple more. Safeguard America Voter Eligibility Act, U.S. House of Representative Official Legislative Text. Arizona versus Intertribal Council of Arizona, Inc., United States Supreme Court opinion, reproduced by Justia. Tentative 2026 legislative schedule, United States Senate. Thank you for listening. Until next time, bye bye for now.